Thanks for joining our panel for discussion today. My name is Cassie Draper, and I am 50% or co-host of the My Invisible Disease podcast. To get started, let's introduce some of our panelists. So in no particular order, we have Virginia Franco. She has a lot of credentials. So MD, CEO, founder of Yanni Solutions. Give us a wave, Virginia.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me well, hopefully?
I can. Yeah.
So nice to meet everyone. Hello, everyone. My name is Virginia Franco. I'm a medical doctor. I'm a gynecologist by training, specialized in pathologies of the genital tract, women genital tract, and also women's health in primary care. Luckily, I had the opportunity to work with Swiss technology in vaginal microbiome, in microbiome Swiss technology, actually, that could better address solutions in women health. And therefore, we incorporated a company specifically to address those problems in women health, which is Yanni Solutions. The company is based in Switzerland. And that here we work, I work today 100% dedicated to the company. Nice to meet everyone.
Thanks so much. Okay, so then we have Kristen Newman, MD, CEO of My Microbiome GmbH. So go ahead and tell me what GmbH stands for.
That's actually the German designation for the form of a company, but we are also an AG, which is a Aktiengesellschaft in Switzerland. And I'm not an MD, I'm a PhD in microbiology, actually. So I'm not a doctor, but I'm a scientist. And yeah, I'm the founder of My Microbiome, and yeah, it's all about microbiology, and my background is all about microbes and microbiology. And we have on one hand created a platform that creates awareness about the topic of the microbiome as such. So not only skin, but we have focused our business on the certification of skin products like cosmetics and personal care products, because it's important when using those products that we are keeping the microbiome untouched and we don't disrupt it with the products that we're using.
Amazing. Yeah. Okay, then we have Mary Drago, MD, founder of Gileen Cosmetics. Did I say that correctly? Sorry.
Hi everyone. So my name is Marie, and yes, I'm the founder of a skincare brand called Galine, and I'm a French doctor in pharmacy. And we launched back in 2016 products dedicated to caring to the skin microbiome, scalp microbiome, oral microbiome, and genital microbiome. So we are beauty products that take care of your beauty inside out, always focusing on the microbiome and how we can help it. So specially adapted to sensitive skin.
Amazing. And last but not least, we have Jessica Mark Welch, PhD, Senior Scientist, ADA Forsyth. Okay, there we go.
That's right. So yeah, so I'm a senior scientist at the ADA Forsyth Institute, which was just formed by a merger of the American Dental Association and the Forsyth Institute. So we are a research organization dedicated to improving oral health and overall health. My piece of it is to try to understand the oral microbiome and how it works. And I'm speaking to you in front of a picture of the oral microbiome, the bacteria that live on your tongue. We'll talk more about that later.
Wow, I am honored to be surrounded by such an incredibly intelligent group of women. I got here because I got sick. So then I made a podcast about it. So today's discussion is entitled, "It's Not All About Gut, Vaginal, Oral, or Skin Microbiome in Health and Disease." And like the gut microbiome, each of these is important for your overall health. Our panelists are going to go and explain all of this to us. Our first question, I'm going to lead towards Kristen to start. If you have anything to add, though, that's cool too. But what is the difference between the microbiome in the 4 areas of our bodies? So gut, vagina, mouth, and skin. Is it the same group of microorganisms just found in different areas, or are they different in each area? What is the difference?
Yeah, actually, that's a good question, because I think most people think that we have one microbiome, which is not true, because our body is like a planet actually, and we have a lot of different environments, and just imagine in the gut, it's warm, we don't have any oxygen, it's rich in nutrients, it's humid, and there's other microbes living than on the skin. For example, the skin is like a desert. There's not many nutrients there. We have dry, sebaceous, and moist areas. The scalp is again a different area. And then if we look at the vagina, Virginia probably knows more about that, but here it's also humid and warm, but very selective for the different microbes. And mouth is also having different microenvironments, let's say it's like that, like teeth and the gums and the tongue. So we find different communities even in the mouth. So and that's why it's very complex to understand the whole microbiome of the body and how it is again interacting with each other, but also with the body, and it's highly complex, and we are really just at the beginning of understanding how it works. But we know that it's playing a major role in our overall health, and we have to take care of it with everything we do in our lives. And I don't know if you want to talk about the microbes that are specifically living on the different body areas, but maybe someone else wants to jump in on that.
I can take the skin.
Yeah.
So yes, skin microbiome is very different from the gut, because as Christine was saying, in the gut there's no light, there's no oxygen, and it's very nice and warm. On the skin it's much drier. Like if it was a planet, it would probably be like the desert area. But what's interesting with the skin microbiome is that it's just there. So to sample and to know what's living where, it's much easier to do that on the skin than in the gut. And for me, I have a big passion for the scalp microbiome also, because it's more like a tropical forest in that case, because you also, on top of the normal bacteria that you have on skin, you also have yeast that are living with the bacteria in a good entente. And that means also that you can get diseases that are very specific to the scalp rather than the skin. But for me, it's clearly the two coolest microbiomes.
Very cool. Very cool. The next question we have, I'm going to direct towards Virginia. Why is there so much attention being paid to vaginal microbiome these days?
That's a very good point and important to speak about it. Nowadays, people are talking more about vaginal microbiome than in the past for many reasons. Historically, a quick story before we directly address the question, but historically, the studies was run in men. Historically, studies were performed in men's population, even if the final solution is supposed to address both genders.
They like to ignore the women, though.
Yeah, but now plenty of studies were run by men, even if we were always using the same ending solution. And what happens is that people started talking more. First of all, we took a ride in a lot of gut microbiome studies. The topic microbiome, thanks to gut microbiome studies, it started to be more hot topic, and we took a bit of a ride in those gut there. Okay, there's the gut microbiome, a lot of evidence. And what about the other areas of the body, the other microbiomes, and finally the vaginal microbiome? But I think one thing is important to say is that women's health, there are a lot of stigma and taboos around the genital intimate health, because people normally historically do not speak about sexual health of women in the past, or because they are shamed because of taboos and stigmas, or because they simply don't care. So today we thank God we speak more about it, and the fact that we are breaking taboos help us a lot not to be that drastically underfunded area. And the fact that we are breaking taboos, it helps us to fundraise, and we need money to do clinical research and to finally got to an ending solution. So I think the answer is there are a lot of answers to your question, but I think this is the main reasons. Those are the main reasons.
Amazing. So Jessica, we've obviously heard a lot about oral bacteria over the years. You know, we've been told from a young age that we need to get rid of it and all of that. So is this the same thing as an oral microbiome? How knowledgeable are dentists about oral microbiome?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the oral bacteria are part of the oral microbiome. I think we've kind of rebranded them, rebranded the oral bacteria as the oral microbiome. but the microbiome also contains other little creatures that are too small to see. That's why they're microbes. That includes yeasts and other small organisms that aren't bacteria, and also many viruses, lots of viruses that infect the bacteria, and then viruses that infect us. All of that is sort of collectively the microbiome, but most of it is bacteria and the viruses of bacteria.
Very cool.
Yeah.
We call them sugar bugs in our house.
Sugar bugs. yeah. So, and I could talk to you a little more about the oral microbiome. So, I mean, obviously, they're fascinating little creatures that build these beautiful organized structures on your tongue, like this one behind me, and different organized structures on your teeth. And what I'm doing as a scientist is trying to understand what determines which bacteria can live on the tongue, which can live on the teeth. There are some that only live in the roof of your mouth. There are some that only live on your gums. And if we want to develop probiotics, more effective probiotics, we really need to know what are the rules that determine which bacteria can live where. How can you get the good bacteria to grow where you want them? How can you stamp out the bacteria you don't want? So that's one of the major things we're working on right now.
Just from my side, what are your experiences with dentists? Are they, so in Germany, they don't know about the oral microbiome. I have to tell them to not disinfect my gums all the time.
Yeah. So, how much do dentists know about the microbiome depends a lot on the dentist. Some of them are really interested and are really keeping up on all the news about the microbiome. I think as more and more people realize the importance of the microbiome for your oral health and for your overall health, I think more dentists will be interested. Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Kristen, your company tests skin products to determine their effect on the skin microbiome. What led you to start your company?
Well, yeah, as I said, it was we were diving into the microbiome space by like having this platform for information. We wanted also to gather information from the experts in the microbiome field, but we learned that the industry, specifically the cosmetics industry, was already a lot of jumping ahead of the science, and there's no regulation for the microbiome space in the cosmetics industry, and we kind of saw a gap there. And me as a scientist and a microbiologist, I came up with the idea of creating a test that would distinguish the products that are harmful for the microbiome from those that are not. And this is how the certification was born. So we are now testing products in the laboratory on their effect that they have on the most abundant microbe on the specific skin area where it is applied. We also test for scalp, vaginal products. We keep discussing actually the vulva and the vagina because it's the vulva microbiome is not yet very well analyzed. But yeah, we look always at what is there, what do we know about different microbiomes, and how do we best test them in the laboratory to make the best outcomes out of our tests. And the products that we're testing are then in the end receiving a certification mark. They can use a seal that tells that the product is not influencing the healthy microbiome of the respective body area.
Very cool. So on our podcast, we interview the women that have started some type of project. They're obviously like reaching out to us because they've had health issues of their own. So when Marie told me that she started her company because of her own problem, that really resonated with me. So Marie, cosmetic companies are moving towards products that are good for the skin microbiome. What motivates them to do so?
I think for me, as a scientist, I think once you discover the microbiome, like we had this very sterile picture of skin for years, and suddenly it's adding this new dimension to skin. That means that when you're developing skincare products, you've got to take this new dimension into account. So I think in the future, and thanks to people like Christine, all the skincare will be microbiome skincare because it makes a lot of sense. And also it seems that today sensitive skin is the norm, not so much an exception anymore. And all this inflammation umbrella of sensitive skin, premature aging, eczema, acne, it's all linked to a microbiome dysbiosis. So I think more and more companies are understanding this and trying to help with the problem. And also it's the consumer education about microbiome comes a lot from nutrition. So the more people are going to take care of their gut microbiome, the more you're going to see it as a new market for skin.
Right. So they're starting to, lean into that. And Virginia, why is it, do you think that, how should I say this? Why is it important to maintain a healthy vaginal microbiome?
The vaginal microbiome is a quite intricate and dynamic ecosystem that changes depending on the population, changes all the time depending on your habits. And the thing is, if you have a poor microbiome, let's call this way, you are more likely to have recurrent infections. The definition of poor microbiome, it's quite tricky because it depends on the population. Again, it varies. But you are more likely to have recurrent infections such as bacterial vaginosis, candidiasis, and therefore more likely to have prevalence of sexually transmitted bacteria and virus that could cause potentially cervical cancer, for example. So you must take care of your vaginal microbiome. You should talk about it with your gynecologist. You should understand about it in order to prevent yourself from having recurrent genital problems.
Wow. Yeah, I think that people they never really trace it back to where could it have started? What can they do to prevent these things? It's more of like a treatment situation versus a preventative, because as you mentioned before, people don't really talk about vaginal health and all of that. So that's very interesting. All right, what's our next question? Tell us more about the oral microbiome and why keeping it healthy is important. Jessica?
Yeah, absolutely. So the oral microbiome, when it's healthy, does what does good things for our body. Some of them we understand, others we maybe don't understand yet. And then when it's diseased, the bacteria from the microbiome can cause problems elsewhere in the body. So one of the things that we know that the oral microbiome does is work on the nutrients that you consume so that they're usable by your body. Right. So, for example, if you eat a diet that is rich in green leafy vegetables and beets, that's a diet that's rich in nitrate, and it will lower your blood pressure, but not if you're using an antiseptic mouthwash. So your body needs those bacteria that are in your mouth to convert that nitrate into nitrite, which your body can use. And then that modulates your blood pressure and has other effects on your body. So that's at least one thing that we understand so far about what the oral microbiome is doing for you and why you want to keep it healthy, and why you might not want to use, for example, antiseptic mouthwashes, unless your doctor has told you that you should. A reason a doctor might tell you that you should is that when there's inflammation in the body, then the oral bacteria can establish themselves in the gut and elsewhere. And the kinds of oral bacteria that grow when you have periodontal disease, they can kind of wander around your body. They could get established in your heart valves. Some of the bacteria might be associated with colon cancer. So your doctor might advise you that you personally should try to eliminate as many bacteria as you can, even using mouthwash. But I would say if you're healthy, it's better to avoid that, to remove the bacteria physically, but not to, stamp them out chemically.
So Jessica, how is like a skin or vaginal or oral microbiomes like established? Like how is it first established?
Yeah, that's a good question. So when we are born, our bodies are sterile, and then they are immediately colonized by bacteria from our mother, from the people around us. For little kids, it would be, other kids in the daycare, or, other kids that they meet. So we get some of our microbiome from our families because we're living closely with them, but also a lot of it comes from outside the family, just from nearby people. But your oral microbiome really would come from other people's. Sorry, I'm trying to solve this problem with the light here. Your oral microbiome comes from the oral microbiome basically of other people. And I would say the same with skin. Your skin microbiome would come from skin of other people.
We got an audience question here. that is saying, what do you think of sterilizing oral mouthwashes? So I think that's what you're talking with the antiseptic, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah. So a sterilizing oral mouthwash really can raise your blood pressure a little bit, because you're interrupting the ability of those bacteria to, work with the nutrients in your food and modify your blood pressure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'll ask this to everybody then. So if anyone has anything to add to this, is there anything a mother can do during pregnancy that can influence a healthy microbiome? Not all at once.
So maybe I'll start with it. So
Sure.
so the mother's like during pregnancy, the baby is sterile in the belly, but still the mother's behavior, the mother's diet, and how the mother feels, and like the mother's health status still has an influence on the development of the baby, but and also on the vaginal microbiome. So it's important that the vaginal microbiome is healthy to have a healthy pregnancy without preterm birth occasions, but also the metabolites from the mother's blood to the baby during pregnancy can differ depending on how healthy the mother is and how the microbiome of the mother is. So the best, of course, also for the mother, for the pregnant mother, is to have a healthy diet, to exercise, and to be relaxed in order to and not confer too much also stress hormones to the baby, to have it to have everything good in a good shape. And also then during birth, I think it's important that the mother's microbiome is healthy, because then that's the first point of touch with the microbes on the baby. And also the mother's milk is very important for the development of the healthy microbiome of the baby, all over the body, for the gut, but also for the skin and everywhere in the body. So that, and the mother's milk also, of course, is different depending on how the mother's lifestyle is.
I think that's important. Can I add to that even the pregnancy itself has an impact on the oral microbiome, on oral health. So if one is pregnant or trying to get pregnant, it's important actually to go to your dentist and make sure that you take really good care of your teeth, because that's an especially stressful time for the body. And then if you protect your own oral health, then that can of course help the oral health of your children.
Virginia, this is just my layman's thoughts, but I have heard people talk about vaginal birth versus C-section. Does microbiome come into play? Is that another point where they're being exposed to the microbiome, or how does that work?
Yes, there are studies running about vaginal seeding. This is probably what the point that we will talk about here. The vaginal seeding, those studies, those researchers, they believe that the fact that some babies are born under C-section, they do not have contact with the vaginal microbiome colonization, and therefore they could be more likely to have immunity problems in the future. Even some research addressing neurological problems in babies born under C-section. So those studies are focused on putting those babies in contact with the vaginal microbiome to prevent future adult problems. It's not my focus, my specific area of study, but those are I think we will learn a lot with those results for sure. And I trust that we will get positive outcomes from that, and that we could potentially use in the future addressing vaginal microbiomes studies. So I think I'm curious that I think there is a lot of things to come from those studies, but that's the definition of the seeding, vaginal seeding.
Yeah, so maybe I can add to that. So because there was one study that was showing that actually the breastfeeding, so the mother's milk would have a stronger effect than the birth mode then in the end. So there is, like Virginia said, the birth mode probably has an effect. So some studies suggested that because they would that there's a difference between the vaginal microbes, the lactobacilli, but also the gut microbes that the baby is in touch with when being born via the vaginal area, or versus the cesarean section, where it meets the skin microbes and the hospital microbes in the worst case for the first as a first seeders of their body. But it has been shown, which is I think very interesting, that the mother's milk, like feeding them with the mother's milk, would then again like have even a bigger effect than the birth mode, which is, I think, because they're feeding the right, like there's probably some of the good ones seeding in the baby, and then they're being fed with the right way, with the good sugars from the milk, from the mother's milk, and a lot of molecules there, and that's even having a bigger effect. So I thought that was also very interesting, being a mother myself. So yeah.
Okay, so the next question I have has a word in it that I don't know what it is, so you might have to like translate it to yourself. So the word is gut dysbiosis. I don't know what that is. Can anyone translate that for me?
I would say dysbiosis is,
Okay.
yeah, so it's the idea that the bacteria have shifted in some way that's unhealthy, right?
Okay, perfect. So keep this in mind while I read this question to you. So gut
Dysbiosis.
yeah, is thought to be on the increase based on antibiotics, C-sections, sterile environments, is diobio blah, blah, blah. It's also taking place in other microbiome systems. And if so, what is causing it? Marie, do you want to start with the skin care side of it?
Yes, because that's an easy one for the skin. What causes most of the dysbiosis is actually self-inflicted. It's the way we wash. And as humans, for the last 50 years, we've been washing a lot more and also living indoors a lot more, which means that we are not exposed to some natural microbiome. Most of the microbiome of our skin comes from very sterile environment, and we don't touch people as much, especially since the start of the pandemic. Which means that, yes, your microbiome is a lot poorer than it used to be. But yeah, for me, like whenever people ask me, how can I get a better skin microbiome? It's always about how do you wash, and can you maybe not wash as much and not as harshly as you're doing? That's going to fix already a lot of the problems.
Yes,
Great.
and I think, sorry.
Oh, sorry, who was that?
Just
Kristen?
using less products as well, like washing less and also using less products, because a lot of products can harm the microbes on our skin. So, and if using products, they should be very mild and ideally microbiome friendly. Yeah,
Perfect. Well, we actually have a question from the audience here. How do you define a microbiome friendly product? So do you have any tips on how to figure that out?
Well, then it's not an easy one. So either the products are certified by us, or they have data that show that they have done some science with their products that have shown that the microbiome was not touched by the product. So either the product or the company is showing some data on their website, because I know there's a lot of products out there that claim to be microbiome friendly because either they are adding pre-pro postbiotics, or they're skipping certain ingredients, or adjusting the pH. But I would really look, before spending a lot of money, look at their website and see if there's really data that they're showing, and if not, I wouldn't buy it. Or like really look, and also look for products that are made for sensitive skin. I think that's the best match always, like sensitive products that are made for sensitive skin usually are also microbiome friendly. Cassie, can you still hear us?
Oh, my AirPod just disconnected for some reason.
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we
Yes.
can hear you.
Sorry about that. Keep going.
Yeah, and
Okay.
maybe just to give you an idea how we do determine if a product is microbiome friendly, we do have the most abundant microbes that live on our body and supposed to be there. We cultivate them in the laboratory and we bring them into contact with the product. And then in this setting, this is the most sensitive setting that you can imagine for the product and for the bacteria. And if the bacteria and the fungi that are not disturbed by the product in this setting, then we can be sure that it's not harming the microbes on our skin.
I think that I follow Kristen here. I fully endorse what she's saying. I think that depends on what they are defined as a microbiome friendly product, but products that are not, in my point of view, not mostly composed by artificial ingredients that could disrupt and cause gut inflammatory disease, and therefore affect the other parts of the body, the other microbiomes, the skin microbiome, vaginal microbiome. So I think it's important to care about what you ingest in order not to disrupt and not cause any inflammatory diseases that could potentially disrupt your microbiome. I think this is more in this direction, because there's also the definition of microbiome friendly, depends on what they mean with that, but I think it goes in this direction.
So I would agree with that. And can I just say about dysbiosis that I think we all know what that idea means, right? That there's something wrong with the microbiome, but what does it look like? We still don't have a very good handle on what is the range of normal. How many different ways can you have a normal microbiome? So I would say there's some, in some cases there's disease and there are bacteria clearly associated with disease. There are other bacteria that are associated with health, but often you find bacteria associated with disease even in healthy people sometimes. So there's really still a lot we don't understand. And most of our information is from Western populations. We really need to get more information about what did the microbiome look like before we started using all these products and eating this weird diet that we eat and all those things that we do. We really need to know more.
That's fair for sure. So with the gut dysbiosis, oh my gosh, am I ever going to be able to say this word? Okay. Gut dysbiosis, FMT, is a new upcoming treatment where they reseed the microbiome. Are there similar treatment options for vaginal, oral, and skin? And if so, how do you fix it?
I would say
Virginia.
yeah.
Should I start? Okay.
Yes.
The concept of dysbiosis in vaginal microbiome, it's tricky since, as we said in the beginning, and I think as Jessica just mentioned, the concept of dysbiosis is quite unique since our microbiome is unique. For the vaginal microbiome, it is our good microbiome is believed to be the one colonized by lactobacillus, which is a bacteria. So we are now as ladies colonized by lactobacillus, and depending on the lactobacillus, those are better than others that could be not that good. Anyway, so the concept of dysbiosis in vaginal microbiome, it's not, there is not one unique concept for it. There is no specific treatment for the concept of dysbiosis. The concept of itself change between women. Luckily, the studies with probiotics, which are food supplements, are emerging and helping to equilibrate this natural ecosystem, preventing hopefully the overuse of antibiotics and therefore resistance in the long run. But a lot of things can cause a dysbiosis in terms of vaginal microbiome. A lot of things, habits, the food, the smoking, and so on and so forth. So that's my short answer for it. That would be my answer.
And what about treatments for the skin, Marie?
Well, seeding is such an interesting way to do things, but for me, like for my brand, it's always been about protecting what's already there and caring for your existing microbiome, trying to help rebalance rather than to try a strong fix, because I think it's almost like when you try to remove all bacteria and put something else, it's kind of what we've been doing before. That being said, like there are some really cool studies about body odor and seeding on the skin, how you can actually transplant some non-smelling people armpit microbiome into some smelling people and they stop smelling, which I think is quite cool. And there's also some good studies being done on acne and how you can seed some non-inflammatory acne bacteria onto some acneic people and maybe fix the strain balance and try to help with acne. But it's very close to being an infection rather than a seeding. So for me, it's always been like more on the pre and postbiotic side, trying to rebalance your existing microbiome. Seeding is a very different kettle of fish. I find like it's a lot stronger and you don't want to make any mistake on your customer skin.
Right, absolutely. And Jessica, what about for oral? How do you fix your microbiome?
Yeah, I would say similarly to what Marie just said, that the way that we have, at least right now, to fix the oral microbiome is just to well, floss and remove any problem, bad bacteria that you might have just with mechanical means, and then let the body heal itself, right? You try to create the environment that the good bacteria like to grow in, and then let the body do the rest. Maybe someday we'll get to the point where we know how to transplant bacteria. We know which bacteria we might want to transplant and know how to get them to grow in the environment that we want them in. But for now, what we're doing is creating the environment where the good bacteria grow. And that includes actually diet as well as oral hygiene, flossing and cleaning your tongue and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and it is not easy to transplant quite kind of, so it's kind of working, as Marie said, in some examples, but it will not stay there. It will come back. So the natural microbiome that was there before will come back. So you have to reseed over and over again. I think the same was with Saffron in her experience. She did this FMT for over a year, right? Until she was healed. So I think that's not an easy just seeding it once and then it's gone. So you have to repeat it. It has to work. It has to be the right microbe for your skin. And I think it's something that we see in the future, and I think it's going to happen in the future. But right now we're not that far yet with what we know.
Interesting. So Kristen, while I have you, I'm going to ask you, do pro and prebiotics help the skin biome? Oh, sorry, microbiome, oral or topical on the area, or does oral work as well?
So from my point of view, the probiotics or prebiotics that are designated for the skin or that you find in most products are rather working on the skin itself. So there have been some studies that they have a good effect on the skin, but modulating the skin microbiome with probiotics is not, there's not many products out there. The ones that Marie mentioned, there's one product that has a specific C. acnes strain in its product, or that is working for some people. But most probiotics or prebiotics are actually taking from the knowledge we have from the gut, and they are not making a lot of sense on the skin microbiome, but some of them have a good effect on the skin. So for probiotics for the microbiome, for skin microbiome, I would rather go for oral probiotics, but also here it's rather about a holistic approach that you see when your overall health is good, for your gut health is good, then that reflects on your skin. So it won't directly have an effect on the skin, but on your overall health, and then your skin becomes better as well.
Right. And Virginia, how does pro and prebiotics affect the vaginal microbiome?
For vaginal microbiome, there are probiotics that you for vaginal use and oral probiotics as well. For regulatory reasons, you cannot just create a vaginal probiotic and use it directly in the vagina if you are not fully compliant with regulatory rules of a vaginal probiotic, which can be quite complicated. But for oral probiotics, so taking the other side, oral probiotics, a lot of studies showing that oral probiotics is a promising tool for vaginal microbiome as well. For many reasons, they can be more simple to be used, and that's one of the reasons that I personally advocate for it. Many reasons that we can speak about it later. But anyway, there are studies with specific strains of bacteria, specific species and strains of lactobacillus showing that there is a migration from those oral probiotics. Oral, you take it, even if you take it orally, there is a migration to the vagina of women. And we believe this is quite linked to the anatomy of women, to our anatomy, so the capacity of those bacteria to migrate. So those are studies that has been demonstrated by specific companies that works with food supplement, which are the probiotics, demonstrating their capacity to migrate, so that you take it orally and you find in the vaginal microbiome. And of course, we improve the symptoms that the lady had in the beginning. So this is very important to take care of when we speak about oral and vaginal probiotics. This is very important to mention. Regulatory rules always there. But anyway.
Interesting. And Marie, how do you...
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I was going to ask Marie how she thinks that pro and prebiotics are affecting the skin.
Well, I think Christine's answer on the skin was really true, that pre and probiotics, probiotics in the strict sense of the term are really rare, like live bacteria on skin in cosmetic products is not something that's easy to do, and that's not something the consumer wants, to be honest. Prebiotics have originally been developed for the gut and transferred on skin, but more and more now we've got very interesting novel prebiotics that we can use to stimulate some skin bacteria. I love, like, everything was quite oligosaccharide, so everything was around inulin before, but more and more we've got polyphenols, we've got vitamins that have proven to be some good prebiotics. So I love the fact that as science progresses, so does cosmetics, because the beauty business is quite responsive and goes really fast compared to drugs. So that's quite an interesting field, actually. And yeah, now like you can target some bacteria on some actions. So you can have like a helping on acne, or helping on eczema, or just helping with skin aging or sun protection. So yeah, prebiotics are a really good tool in a cosmetic development.
And Kristen, do you have anything to add to that?
And no, I just wanted to ask Virginia if it would make sense then to use the oral products directly on the side where it should be going to, just off label use.
It could make sense to do that, but you have to be careful once you develop a product. So in terms of product development, be careful with the regulatory rules. But yes, it could make sense. There are even some doctors that recommend the use of yogurts locally. And we see that. We see people recommending it. So yes,
as a topical
sense,
situation.
In the level of product development, be aware of the regulatory rules of the country and the region that you live. Just this. But yes, the answer is yes. It could make sense. Yeah.
Interesting. So Jessica, how does the pre and probiotics affect the oral microbiome?
Yeah, I would say the oral microbiome, the surfaces in the mouth are already so covered with bacteria that it's very hard for bacteria that you might eat to establish themselves on there. So one thing we would like to do is figure out what kinds of protocols we might need to be able to establish potential probiotic bacteria. But so for the moment, I would say what people would have to rely on is this prebiotic, which is something that you eat that helps the good bacteria to grow. And that could include, for example, leafy greens and lots and lots of vegetables that probably encourages the growth of good bacteria. And again, just changing the environment so that the good bacteria would grow. But the field of probiotics is, I would say, for the oral microbiome, really in its infancy.
Very good. Okay, so when we're young, we're dealing with acne. When we grow older, we're worried about wrinkles. I can definitely feel that one. Is the skin microbiome connected with acne? What about wrinkles? I gotta know.
I can take this one. Yes, of course. So that's something interesting. The more you know about the microbiome, the more you understand that most skin problems have a bacterial origin. So instead of just focusing on the symptoms, you can focus on the cause, which is cool. Acne is obviously linked to a dysbiosis of the microbiome because acne is caused by a strain of inflammatory bacteria called C. acnes. Aging is also very linked to the microbiome because the microbiome, when it's diseased, cause inflammation, and so inflammation degrades the cells, and that's how you've got premature aging. So of course UV and age and hormones bring aging, but through inflammation. So if you can act on inflammation, you can help prevent aging. And yes, acne and eczema are the two big bacterial diseases on the skin. So yes, the microbiome is at the root of everything.
And Kristen, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, maybe on the aging, we know that our microbiome is changing when we are aging, but it's actually the root cause of it is that we are producing less sebum, less nutrients for C. acnes, and C. acnes is then becoming less, and then you can kind of reverse that or help with that by adding more C. acnes to the skin again, or like adding more sebum like ingredients via the cosmetics. So that is something also very interesting, because when at the very beginning of the research of skin microbiome, everyone talked about diversity and how important it is, and the higher the diversity, the better. But you have to imagine that on our skin, C. acnes is one of the main microbes, specifically in the face. It's 80 to 90% of it. It's C. acnes, and if it's being reduced, all the other microbes are growing better, and then your diversity goes up. And this is what happens when you age. The C. acnes is being reduced and the diversity goes up, which is actually not good, because you need C. acnes, because it's also producing a lot of antioxidants and so on. So it's really a great bug, and we need it, and it's getting less when aging.
Well, this has been an incredible discussion. I am like floored by how intelligent you women are. Like, I don't understand most of this stuff, and thanks for teaching me. I really appreciate this. But I do want to give you each one more opportunity here to share with our audiences what you think the most important thing you can do to keep your microbiome healthy. So let's start with Virginia.
Well, I think we already mentioned it at some point, but from the gynecologist's point of view, having a healthy lifestyle, so ingesting water, practicing exercise, eating fibers, healthy food, having protected sexual intercourse, visiting your gynecologist, speaking with your gynecologist of everything that you feel, and speaking about sexual health. I highly encourage people to have a healthy lifestyle, because it does have an enormous effect for the vaginal microbiome. If you have a chronic disease, if you have for people that have diseases, chronic disease that compromise their immunity system, take good care of it, because it can also affect a lot the vaginal microbiome in terms of, unfortunately, playing against, let's say, having recurrent vaginal infection. People that have the compromised immune system are more likely to have recurrent vaginal infection. So take a good care of any chronic condition that you have, because it will definitely impact your microbiome in general. And stay healthy, and visit your gynecologist and speak about it with them. Thank you very
Marie?
much. For me, I think I'm stealing this one from Kristen, of course, but so wash maybe less with gentle product, and don't overdo it on routine. And sometimes go and hug a tree. It's really good for replenishing your skin microbiome. Or your pet, kiss your dog. I think for myself, I think it's a bit disgusting, but it works well for your microbiome.
Okay, Kristen?
Yeah, I always keep saying, try to go back to our roots, like the ones that are not touched by Western civilization have the healthiest life and healthiest microbiome. So with everything we do, we should try to go back from what we are forced to do by our society, and go more back to nature, and think about what would our ancestors do, or what would I do if I would live in the forest? Like, try to also eat unprocessed and fresh food. It's really a difference. If it's shipped from like the other side of the planet, it has already lost a lot of nutrients. And if it's processed, it's very different from fresh foods. And and hug trees. I would go with that as well.
Did you just say hug trees?
Yeah.
I
Hug a tree every day.
Everybody should hug more trees. I agree.
Yeah.
And Jessica, last but not least.
Right. I absolutely agree with all of the other panelists. So for the oral microbiome, I would say the main things to do are floss your teeth every day. I'm sorry if I sound like a dentist, but you should floss your teeth, clean your tongue, and try to eat more vegetables. Find ways to eat more vegetables, and hug trees. That's a good plan too. But yeah, the health of the mouth is really intimately connected with the health of the rest of the body. So just spend a little time thinking about the health of your mouth.
Yeah,
amazing.
I take an opportunity to complement what I was saying, but it's important always to avoid overuse of too much cosmetic vaginal products, because great part of them has a lot of chemicals, and you don't have to change the smell of your vagina, your natural smell. You don't have to do that, okay? You don't have to be ashamed of that. And so avoid overuse of cosmetics in your perfumes. Be careful with those products in your vagina. It is quite irritative. And avoid over douching inside of the vagina. This is also important to mention. Okay,
Virginia, I missed a question, and I'm like, oh my God, I should have asked this. I wish I had more time. But Yoni Solutions, your company, how do your products link into this? And then we're done.
Yoni Solutions, we have a vaginal microbiome test, a targeted analysis test that we basically what we see is the most prevalent bacterial colonization and fungal colonization of each woman, bacterial and fungal colonization, to better address probiotics. And we have our own line of probiotics, oral probiotics in this case, because if each woman is unique with a different unique microbiome, then we believe that the ending solution should also be unique and personalized. And visit our website and keep in touch to know more.
I know that everybody's going to be so excited to learn more about you guys, and I know that they're going to provide all of the links to your socials and all of those things. But I do want to remind everybody that the Designer Shit documentary has been released on November 14th, and it is now available for pre-sale at the designershitdocumentary.com and the following streaming platforms, Amazon, Apple TV, and Vimeo. We also did a incredible episode with the Designer Shit team at the My Invisible Disease podcast. So you should come and listen to that as well. But I just really enjoyed our discussion today. Thank you for helping me work through English. I'm not very good at it. So, you know, I still don't know how to say diabasis, whatever. Anyways, I'm going to talk about that. But if you also enjoyed this panel, please join for another scheduled throughout the month of November. They're free of charge, and you can register for them at the designershitdocumentary.com. And we have put the link in the chat. Once again, I'm sorry I didn't get to everyone's questions, but wow, what a great panel today. And I had so much fun. Thanks, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, everyone.
See you. Bye-bye.
It was awesome.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.